a real simple view on a national scope is, I mean, we all know how the government works. Once they realize they've made a mistake, they swing 180 degrees the other way and make it, too tight. They got way too loose with the qualifications for home ownership. A lot of, and of course you'll like to hear this, a lot of the Democrats up in Washington decided that we need to increase home ownership. We need to increase home ownership. And there's a segment of the population that has no business with home ownership. They're not managers. They don't know how to manage a home. They're good renters, let somebody else take care of the property for them, and they pay their monthly rent. And when they start, they wanted to increase home ownership, and they loosened the guidelines so much that they allowed 35% of your income to go towards your mortgage. You could qualify for a mortgage as long as your payment didn't go over 35% of your income. I know for a fact that, in the standard of living that people live, if you're going to take a third of my income and put it to my house, and I still have to pay utilities and car payments and insurance and all that stuff, there's nothing left at the end. And so now they swung it back the other way, and it's so hard to get qualified that, people that could or should have home ownership are suffering from that. So, the $8,000 to new home buyers, I think we'd be better served giving every person in the United States a $5,000 tax credit. And that would make people, I know I would look at a move up if I knew I could get a $5,000 tax credit at the end of the year. Make it open to everybody and get the money flowing again, and loosen up, the bailout. They're not using it for the right purposes. I mean, the bailout needs to go into the people's hands instead of the bank hands, and give everybody that tax credit. And because and interest, of course, is the grease that keeps the wheel going. And loosen the interest back up. You don't have to go as loose as you were, but bring it back down where people can qualify for loans and buy, and purchase, and give everybody, put the money in our hands so that it'll make things start moving again. I mean, I know a lot of people probably in this room would consider maybe a move up, or a lot of people in my age group will consider a move up if they had a $5,000 tax credit at the end of the year. I mean, instead of just a home, because you're making your segment so small, you're really not increasing people to get out there and spend money. I mean, how many? There's just not that many first-time buyers. So give it to everybody across the board. Make it less, but give it to everybody.
To kind of put it in perspective a little bit, interest rates right now are what they were when Kennedy was president and minimum wage was $1.25. Well, that's enough to stimulate some stuff, to get it going. Go out there and borrow some money, because that's what happened in the 80s. The interest rate was so high. Nobody's getting anything on their interest-bearing accounts right now, nothing. And you're not, and you're scared of the stock market. So, real estate will make a quicker recovery if they could stimulate it, and I think they understand that. The problem is, like I said, it's just the money's coming in to the banks that are sitting there holding it, and they're not the banks that loan. Our local banks here are more conservative than they were, but they're good, healthy banks. It's just, I think that it's going to correct. I don't know when, but I think probably it will correct within the next year. I think when it does correct, it's going to correct fast. I just think that everybody thought it would correct sooner.
I think it's already corrected, by the way. I mean, I think we've seen the bottom, and we're starting to come out of it. So that's good news. And every broker I've talked to around the nation have kind of feel the same way. All right, we've kind of been, and Texas lags behind most other states. If you see what California and Arizona and the Northeast or Florida's doing, usually give us about a couple of years, and we'll go through the same cycle as them. And we did here. They started falling off in 06. We started falling off in late 07, 08. Ours wasn't near as drastic as theirs because we didn't see the huge appreciation values like they saw, but we still followed them. So anyway, but I think we've seen the low. I think we've actually we've been through the bottom and kind of starting to come out of it. I mean, you can see it in the stock market. You can see it in home values.
One of the things, too, what Craig was just saying is, just coming back from meeting with a lot of brokers across the United States, the good thing is, and this is a great indicator, California's dollar amount is down, but their units are up, and consistently up every quarter. So that tells us they're moving units. And that market needed to correct majorly. So it has corrected. They're selling more this year than they sold last year. They're selling more this quarter than they did last quarter, and more closings. So the dollar's down, but that's okay. It needed to be down. So they're where our buyers for the 1031s and those type people that stimulate. They say watch California's mistakes, because in 10 years Texas will figure out what they did wrong, and then they'll fix it, and do it right. So who knows?
Craig, is there an advantage of the government buying all the foreclosed houses and then reselling them themselves?
I don't think so. I think the government needs to probably step in and help with short sales. I think if somebody is in a bind and they can't make, they bought a couple years ago. I mean, go over to Buffalo Creek Golf Course, and 1 out of every 6 horse houses on that golf course is empty right now. That's been foreclosed on, and those people. What you need to do is help those people sell their home. The house is worth less than it was 3-4 years ago. Not as drastic here. I got a close friend in Clearwater, Florida. He bought his house in 2005, and the house is worth about 80% what he paid for it in 2005. So 4 years later, he owes like 15% more than what the house is worth. That's a real problem. If he got relocated and had to move and he had to lose that kind of value in his home, that's a real problem. The bailout should be for the banks to help those people. Get the house back priced right, sell it at that 15%, short sell it. Don't foreclose on the person and ruin the credit for the next 7-10 years, because then they can't, then they're frozen for 7 years and can't go get more credit to buy a new car or whatever. They've got a foreclosure on the record. Don't do that to the person, because then you're stifling the economy. Do a short sale. Let the bank take the loss. Let the bailout help, cover the bank's loss. So if, say, I bought a house for $100,000 and it's worth, and the market's fallen off, and I bought it a couple years ago and it's only worth $85,000 now. Well, I did one of those crazy 3% down loans that they, conventional loans that they were financing me for, a couple years ago. Well, see, I haven't built any equity in the last couple of years, so I still owe 95% of what the house is worth. I might have paid down 1% or 2%, and the house is only worth 85% of the value. So I have a 10% loss there, to 15% real loss. Let the bank take that loss. Don't ruin the person's credit. Let the bank take that loss. Let that bailout help that bank, and then the person can go on and still purchase. Then they're going to move into a rental, or they're going to downscale into a house they can afford, but they still can, the economy still moves. That person can still go purchase things and buy things, and they just, us as a nation bankrupted ourselves because we overbought. Especially the generation of, say, 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds are living on credit. They're going out and maxing their credit cards out. They're buying plasma screen TVs. They're keeping up with the Joneses. They're buying houses on the golf course, and there's a lot of $30,000 millionaires out there, and in that age bracket, and they just bankrupted themselves. Well, let them learn from their mistakes, but don't ruin them for the next 10 years by throwing a foreclosure on their record. Let the bank, do a short sale. Let the people sell their house. And at a loss, let the bank take that loss. And
The bank wants to take a loss. That's been the trouble. The bank doesn't want to take a loss.
I understand that, but there's got to be some regulations on that, of course. I mean, there needs to be some regulations on it. I mean, you can't, because it's, to one extent, that's not fair for me that was smart and bought within my means and can make my mortgage. It's not free that they, it's not fair that they get to go out there and live on the hog, fat on the hog for couple years and then realize they can't pay for it and then just get bailed out. There needs to be some regulation, but if you foreclose them, you're just still stifling the economy somewhat. Does that make sense?